Good day, podcast community. Pete Kane here. This is the Pete Kane podcast show, and we have a special guest on the show. It's been years since he was on the show, so a lot has changed, and so we want him to come back and really share a little bit of his journey. So, Brian Bass is our guest. So, Brian, please introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Sure. Yeah. Like Pete said, my name is Brian Bass. I live in the metro Atlanta area, about 30 minutes north of Atlanta. And I've been married to my wife, Jill, for 13 years this year. And we have 5 kids. Yeah, we're the crazy people that have all the kids. We have 5 kids that are 9 and under. And I work in the insurance industry. I've been in insurance for about 7, 8 years now, and recently started my own thing last year.
Awesome. So, what's it like responsibility wise to provide for 9 kids?
5 kids. Don't give me one.
Excuse me. 5.
9 and under,
Yeah. There's another friend has 9. Okay.
Everybody asks me that
like when you wake up.
Yeah, well, everybody asks that question, like, how do you do it at 5? I could never do it. To which my answer is always, yes, you could. We're pretty adaptable as humans, and you just kind of figure out your situation. But yeah, that's what drives me. That's my motivation. You don't really need much motivation these days when you have 5 kids because you have plenty of it. You don't have to search very far. But it's good. It's like this balance of, yes, it's a lot of pressure for sure. My wife's a stay-at-home mom, so like the financial part is up to me to provide. So yeah, it's great. I wouldn't have it any other way because that's what gives me my reason and my purpose to do what I do.
That is so good. So, we talk a lot on our show and other just conversations about purpose. And I had a gentleman who spoke to our Rotary. This is back about 9 months ago. And he was an Army Ranger, a very accomplished person. He now has a big time job at Truist. And so he was talking about the transition from the military, that high level, to civilian. And we're losing like 12 veterans, 12 or 18, I don't know, but it's a lot, to suicide. And he had said everybody says, oh, PTSD, and it's real, no doubt. But he said more than PTSD is purpose. We lack purpose. And what the Bible says, a man without a vision will perish. So when you say purpose, what does that mean to you?
That's a great question. And I'll kind of tell a transparent story to give the answer. My answer is, for a while, I've not really enjoyed birthdays. I just had a birthday that passed. I'm not a birthday guy. I'm not like, let me announce it's my birthday and celebrate. And I realized it's because the past decade or so, my birthday was of how I was living under my potential. And God had put this dream in my heart to have my own business and run my own thing and have my own lifestyle the way I want to design it. And I was kind of stuck in the 9-to-5 world for a while, frustrated, knowing I needed to make a change, but just making excuses for it. Especially when you have a lot of kids, it's easy to say, well, now's not the best time to do it. Too risky. And God had other plans. So I ended up getting fired from my last job. But it was a big surprise. We had a 5th kid on the way. And that's when I started my own business. And I tell you the birthday story because this was about a week ago, my wife, we had a really long conversation. And she goes, I really hope you're proud of yourself of what you've accomplished in the last year because you got knocked down. And not only did you bounce back, but you came back stronger than ever. And I'm literally, Pete, living my dream. Like, I'm not me. I have a lot more goals. But when I was working for somebody else, my dream was I wanted to make a certain amount of money and I wanted to work from wherever I wanted and be able to have the balance of family life as well. And so for me, that purpose, it always goes back to serving people. When I was in my 20s, I was motivated by like the pictures of the Bentleys and the material things, having the nice house. Something happened when I had kids. And then once I clicked into my 30s, the thing that gets me going more than anything these days, it's significance and impact. So if you're telling me I can have an opportunity to make a difference in somebody's life, for me, and I think that's for most people, that's what's going to waken them up in life is having somebody to serve.
Yeah, boy, if we're going to get a short on that because we like clips and stuff. because there was so much that you shared to our audience on that one. Um, I want you to just kind of comment on this. We're, being believers, we're born to create. But today's society has lulled us into consumption. We watch 4 hours of TV, we scroll over 2 hours of social media, which is really other people's lives. You're just looking at somebody's false life that they share to want to put out there. So, creating your own agency, what is that? How explain that to our viewers, the difference between that and what you did before when you were working for somebody else?
Sure. Another great question. I'll answer that with one word: faith. Like,
Hmm.
it's all faith, because there's so many things you may or may not be prepared for when you're running your own business. But if you try and figure all of that out before you start, you'll never do it, and
Hmm.
you'll talk yourself out of it. But if you just jump in, which I had somebody tell me a couple years ago, they said, speaking as a believer, he said, I can tell you how much faith you have by how much risk you take in your life.
Good. Oh my gosh, that
Like,
is
it's
so
so true.
good.
If you
Yeah.
take big risks, it's because you serve a big God and you know He's going to deliver and He's going to put the right people and the right opportunities in your path. And I was not doing that for so long, but I was a believer. And if you asked me, I'd say, oh yeah, I have faith. I had very little faith because I needed the guarantee in my life. And that's what I would say is the biggest difference between building an agency and working for somebody else is there's no guarantees. Like,
Yeah.
and some people don't like that. But
Right.
Jim Rohn has one of the best quotes ever. I know you love Jim Rohn. And he says, profits are better than wages. And
Yes.
man,
Yes.
that quote has come true in my life in the last year. And the thought of going back to a 9 to 5 and working a job and working for a wage, it seems almost like a nightmare at this point, to be
Yeah.
honest, because of the unlimited. Like, there's no guarantees when you're working in all commissions or all business, but man, there's no ceiling either, and it can get really good.
Yeah. I've been fired 5 times in my career.
Wow.
And so I own a lot more labels than most, but here's what I discovered. You do sometimes it's like when we have to do it, we do it.
Hmm.
If when I used to work for Nabisco, and I would ask some of the older guys, like, so what have you enjoyed? I just ask them about their career path, and they all said something very, at least it stuck out to me, is I'm making so much money, I can't do anything else. And so I was like, dang, if I take my life out 15 years, 20 years, am I going to be at such a level that I'm not going to want to take a chance?
Mm.
Because I've got all this lifestyle built up and I don't want to take a chance. I step out on faith. So I ended up quitting with no plan way back. This is back Nate. And it was because I was traveling all the time, gone all the time. Now I got my ears pinned back. I mean, it was disaster for 2 years till I started to figure it out. But so tell us, like, that day, like you come home, you're having that day. I've had 5 of them, so I can relate. So, how did you feel when you walked through the door and you say, Jill, got some news? Oh, share it, hun. Don't have any more employment. What
Uh-huh.
was, what was that like? How did you approach that, or what was that like that day or that week that it happened?
Yeah, so it was last April of 2024,
Hmm.
and I wasn't working that day. Well, I was working from home at that point. We had kind of restructured my job title, and I had the best month I had ever had working for this company for years that I'd been with them. Had the best month. It was my first month of being 1099, so I was like, "This is cool. I can work from home." And then I get a phone call, and I get fired. I don't even get a face to face, nothing. I'm at the gym. I left the gym. I took the phone call, got fired, came home, and my wife wasn't home yet. She had all the kids out with her, and I'm
Yeah,
sitting in the backyard, just saying a prayer, and I know it's going to be okay, but all
yeah,
the thoughts racing through your brain. I mean, we had a fifth kid on the way,
right.
no income now, and
Hmm.
yeah, it was scary. And I remember Jill coming in the backyard, and she goes, "Hey." babe, you okay? And I go, yeah, I'm good. I don't have a job anymore. And then she was just like, excuse me? Because the circumstances surrounding this, like I was never going to be the guy that got fired. It couldn't have been me
Yeah,
until it
right.
was. And so she was just shocked. And we had, Pete, it's like you read the quotes and they come real into your life of like adversity is necessary. And like if you're willing to go through hard stuff, it ends up being a blessing. It really is. It's true. Because it brought me and my wife closer together. It made us rely on God more and
Hmm.
realize that a job's not our source, but God's our source.
Hmm.
And man, we came out like you said, that first year, still not through the first year yet, but I remember in October, it was one of the hardest moments of my life because we had burned through some savings. I had to get liquidate a 401k. And I'm just being really transparent here. I'm running an appointment on Zoom with a client, and I get an email on my phone, and it catches the corner of my eye that my account just got overdrawn. And it was just like,
Yeah.
whoa, we just had our fifth kid. We had our kid in September. This was October. It was the hardest month of my life financially. It was like,
Hmm.
didn't know what I was going to do. I think I forgot how to sell a policy because I went like a week or two without, like I was doing appointment after appointment. I just couldn't sell anything. And man, it was tough. So it's like if you could just get through those periods and not give up, most people are going to quit anytime it gets hard. So if you just make the decision that you won't do that, you'll outlast probably at least 80% of the people out there. Wouldn't you agree with that? Like,
Totally. I had a guy on my podcast, and like we ended up saying like, "How did you find me?" And he goes, "I don't know. I have people that reach out, but this guy was in a concentration camp at age 5. So
hmm,
he grew up in Soviet Union, so 5 years old, you're processing a concentration camp, and it was just like the trauma that he had as a child absolutely launched him to like when I looked him up afterwards, I was like, holy mackerel, accomplished musician, all these awards, he's doing all these incredible things. But he said this. He said, we have PTSD, so post traumatic stress disorder. He said it's post traumatic stress G, and the G is for growth. And he
hmm,
said, whenever we go through stress and trauma, we have a choice, grow or wither. Which one do you want? And so when people launch themselves into growth, all of a sudden they're a different person because they realize that, hey, look, it is what it is. It happened whatever it was. Now, what did I learn from it? And how am I going to be better? But it does take that, it takes faith
hmm.
because I put faith and courage like kind of sisters or brothers, whatever you want to call. And when we feed that fear, we lose the faith and the courage on the other shoulder. So what would you say, like, how do you prepare yourself for the day? I mean, because when you're in business for yourself, you got to make it happen. There ain't no Friday paycheck unless you generate it, unless you go out there and create value. So how do you prepare yourself each day that our viewers might be able to learn from?
Yeah, well, I remember our last podcast. Me and you are definitely book nerds. And you can see the
Yes.
bookshelf behind me here. Uh, I have to read every day. It's like,
Good.
you eat to fuel your body. I need books to fuel my mind because
Yeah.
this battle, like I used to read these books when I was an employee, and I would read Think and Grow Rich and The Magic of Thinking Big. And it talked about the importance of your thoughts and how your thoughts shape your future and all these things that most people know. Like it's a basic statement. But there's something that happens, like you said, when you go out on faith and your income is solely dependent on you. You're not collecting a paycheck anymore. Those books, Pete, they came to life in my life personally. Like they came real. And I realized I need to think and grow rich in order to pay my bills. I need to make sure that this mind stays right. So I'd say one of the most important things I do is in the mornings, before I work, before I do anything, that's my time where the house is quiet, everybody's still sleeping, and I
Mhm.
read. For me, I get in the Word, I pray, and I have to get my mind primed for the day because if I start my day and I'm in control of that, anything can happen and it can all hell can break loose during the day. And clients can cancel policies and people can tell you no, and a new agent quits, and all these different things can happen. But if I control my mind in the morning, I'm so much more prepared to handle that stuff throughout the day. So I would say that's one of the most important things. Obviously, exercising, I think, is important. I think
Yep.
your physical state, people can kind of sense that. And if
Yep.
you're exercising, it's going to give you energy. You're going to come across to other people where you have more energy. You're not lethargic. So there's a number of things that are like non-negotiables in my day. But I would
Yep.
say most importantly is making sure that you get quiet time, unbothered, where you can consciously focus on your thoughts, whether that be visualizing what you're trying to accomplish or working out a problem that you're working on and just kind of getting a journal. I saw you had a title on here beforehand about journaling. Big
Yep.
fan of that, just getting the thoughts and the ideas on paper. So that's the long answer for I get my mind right. I have to get my mind right. In front of me here, I have my whiteboard and I have affirmations that I read. Some people think that's hokey, but
No,
the words that we tell ourselves is what programs the way that we think. So,
I totally agree.
so all that's
You
non-negotiable.
know, just what you shared, I want to share with our viewers too. I was listening, it was like less than a week ago. And this guy, I'd never heard of him, but he had the way they had the podcast, he had done a lot of things. Like he had accomplished, built companies. I think this was like the eighth company, something like that. And so the guy asked him and said, like, what would you when you look at building eight companies, you obviously, I always, and the guy said, I always look at people's track record. And he said, what would you tell our viewers made the difference of you building eight companies? He said, my mindset. He goes, it's 90% mindset. Most people work on the strategy, the tactics, the other stuff, but it's getting that mind right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, dang, that is true because
True.
we take a shower. What if we went 3 weeks without taking a shower? Nobody would hang around you because
Right.
they go, that guy's stinky. But we'll go weeks and weeks without putting anything in this. And I'm a firm believer in self talk. I think if you don't self talk, you're missing an opportunity to really kind of express yourself, create yourself. So, what would you say? Now, you mentioned journaling. So, tell us a little bit about your journaling habit.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's always right next to me because you just never know when you get a thought.
Hmm.
If I'm sleeping, sometimes you wake up, and I heard this story about Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich,
Uh-huh.
and R.G. Letourneau. Have you heard of that name before?
I haven't.
He was an entrepreneur back in the day that built a lot of the big like bulldozers and construction equipment. That was
Uh-huh.
became a multi millionaire, and he always cited that he like his success to his silent partner, which was God. He would always say he would carry this notebook, and Napoleon Hill was telling the story that they were on a plane together, Napoleon Hill and R.G. Letourneau, and R.G. Letourneau's sleeping, and he wakes up out of a deep sleep, and he starts writing something in a notebook, and then falls right back asleep. And later, like an hour or two later, when they get off the plane, Napoleon Hill's like, "Hey, do you remember waking up during the middle of the night and writing down a thought?" And he goes, "No." And he opens his notebook and he goes, "Hot dang!" He goes, "This is a problem I've been trying to solve for 9 months. There it is."
Dang.
And so I heard that, and I'm like, "All right, if it's good enough for him and it works for him, it'll work for me." So journaling could be anything for me, Pete. It could be you say something on this podcast, which you already
Yeah.
have, and I'm going to write it down in a notebook to remember the idea. We're not going to remember it if you just are like, "Oh, that was good," but you don't write it down. So
Right.
now I can go into my journal and I can see, like for me, I like writing the hard things in the journal, the things that you might not tell anybody because it sounds like you're complaining. Get those thoughts on paper. If you're scared, write it down that you're scared. If you're mad at somebody for something they said, write it down. It helps your brain think about it a little bit more.
Mhm.
So it's a hard question to answer for me because I journal about a lot of different things. Uh, I'll write a poem. I'll write
Yeah.
whatever strikes my heart and my spirit. I'll write prayers down in there. But it helps me when I go back. When I looked at when I got fired, I went into my journals, Pete, and I'm like, this was coming. Like I had written in my journals that I'm tired of doing an owner's work and an employee's pay. I need to own my own business. I want to be free. And then all of a sudden I get fired. Now I'm launching my own business. Like that's not a mistake. So yeah, journaling for like high achievers that are always on the go. journaling is a great way to slow down and get your thoughts on paper.
Yeah.
They said when they found Abraham Lincoln's letters, he had written letter after letter of like these striking rebukes that he never sent to anybody. He just wrote them down, and when he wrote it down, he felt better. So it really does work.
Yeah, I think, but it is like the preparation for the mindset. Like I didn't have TV for a couple years. And so first thing I did, I'd get up, drink my water, and I journal. Just my trying to remember my dreams, trying to reflect on the day before, and just anything that was on my mind. Now, I never journaled until the last 3 years because I'm dyslexic and ADD. So I can misspell half the words in a sentence. So I have like that kind of that writer's that you freeze when you can't think of a word. But I have Alexa and Siri and all that. So I breeze through it. But I bet you in my credenza, in 3 years, I have about 15 to 18 journals that I have finished.
Mm.
I journal so much, and I had a lady give us a bunch of journals, and they're good size, and it just helps to get your thoughts out there. It's the best thing to get clarity when you can just start getting it out of here, because I think people don't realize if you don't train that brain, like that guy waking up in the middle of the night, he is training his brain that he's got to get it out. And once you train it that you can get it out, it responds. It's
Yep.
like if you don't, your brain, you're saying to your brain, well, I'll forget it anyway. So why do I
Exactly.
need to remember it? So it's kind of like ladies journal a lot. I think guys, it's one of those things that we haven't really grasped it until you share that. So I hope our viewers just really kind of start anywhere, just start writing
Yep.
instead of scrolling, because that's
Sure.
the default now. Is that phone
Yep.
default is just like I'm going to scroll other people's lives, which it sends the mental part of us down because
Numbs your brain. Yeah.
consuming, we're judging, we're all doing all this stuff. When we get out, what would you say? So you're less than a year
Hmm.
in your business, and
Sorry if you
so
hear babies crying, by the way, in the background.
oh, that's fine. Look, we love everything going on because it's real life. I mean, I
Of course.
can't hear a thing, so
Good. Okay.
you must have super duper sound buffers or something. I don't know.
Who knows?
I
I
love your
hear you for
poster behind your dream.
sure.
So, like, how do you develop that dream muscle? What has been helpful for to you to really like the affirmations, anything else that you do that helps really to build that muscle?
Yeah, I keep pictures in front of me. So like I, I have to, it motivates me. And the dream part for me, Pete, was one of the weaknesses for me. I
Hmm.
remember a guy, I went to a conference years ago, and the guy said, there's three things to be successful. And most people have one, maybe two of them, but most people don't have all three. You're going to have to develop the other ones. Some of them will come naturally. And he said the first one's work ethic. And that's always come pretty naturally to me. I'm a worker. He said the second one is a good attitude, and I'm pretty good at that one too. I've always had a pretty positive disposition.
Hmm.
I needed work on that one for sure. But the third one, as he said, they have a big dream. And that's the one where I come from small town New Jersey. My parents are amazing people, but they're small thinkers. They taught me go to school, get a good education, chase security, get the sure thing. I remember I had a picture of a big house on my refrigerator because my mentor taught me put your dreams on your fridge so you always see them.
Yep.
He must have known that I like to eat a lot, so I'm always in the refrigerator. But I remember my mom coming over and my mom looking at the picture. And what do you think she said when she looked at that big house?
Um, you can't afford that.
She said, "Who's going to clean that place? You know, you have to pay somebody to
She
clean."
did. Oh my
I remember
god.
looking at my mom and just kind of giving her a skeptical look. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Mom, if I can afford that house, don't you think I could probably afford somebody to clean the house too? Like, but my mom's brain doesn't compute that
Yeah.
because she
Yeah.
never had a big dream.
Yeah.
And that was a weakness for me. So when somebody, if I would tell somebody my dreams, my parents would probably be like, you need to be more realistic. And
Yeah.
for me now, when somebody says, I'm going to tell you my dream, but you're going to laugh, I'm like, I guarantee you I won't. because there's no dream that's too big. If you can dream it,
Totally.
like as corny as that sounds, if you can dream it, man, you can do it. Like,
Yes, I am for I'll agree with that, that the dream muscle in most of us is just underused
mhm.
because we're like, oh, I don't want to be so selfish that I want this big dream. I'll settle for this. And
Exactly.
settling is not, that's not, we serve a big God. He wants us to dream big and go out there and figure it out. And, step it out on faith is a lot of figuring it out, is
Yep.
like just doing that. What do you say? Like when you look, we reconnected up at BNI, and I've always liked relationships and building relationships. So what part of your success over the years has been attributed to relationships?
Yeah, all of it, Pete.
Mhm.
Honestly, my wife and I just had this conversation on my birthday. I was thinking about gifts. You know, you get gifts on your birthday. The greatest gift in my life is the people that God's put in my
Hmm.
life. Whether it be like I tell people, besides getting my life right with the Lord, the most important decision I made was who I decided to marry. And I have a phenomenal wife. It starts there. I
Hmm.
couldn't do what I do without her. She raises the kids all day, and I'm working, and she supports me so much. She believes in me so much.
Hmm.
And then my friends, I'm blessed with so many different kinds of friends that they're all different. So like I can see the value that each one of them have in my life.
Hmm.
Like I mentioned, I had great parents growing up. Everything's relationships, and that's what I value so much more than the money, than the material things. You think you're chasing that stuff? It's the relationships along the way. There's young people listening to this. Invest in relationships.
Yeah.
If you invest in relationships while you're in your 20s and your 30s, you will never starve because you'll always have people in your corner and resources and connections that can lead you to better opportunities. And that has proven so true. Like you mentioned, we met at BNI. Well, I had been in BNI for years as an employee. So when I stepped out on my own, those people rallied so much around me to help
Hmm.
me launch this business and to give me the encouragement that I needed. And if it wasn't for them and those relationships that were built up over years,
Yeah.
I don't know that I could have stayed strong. So yeah, relationships are everything.
Yeah, we shared, you were sharing like Growth Day with Ed Milet and Brendan Bouchard, and he has a thing that he teaches calling leveling up our peer group. And so, what has made one of the things he has said that's really helped him achieve the level of success that he has achieved was always surrounding himself with good people, but always wanting to stretch. Like he'll do this where he has a circle and he basically calls a certain amount of people each day, and it'll say, "Hey, Brian, I just wanted to reach out. What are you working on that's exciting that I can help support you with?" And then you'll say it is like, "Is there anybody you would want to meet that I might be able to introduce you to?" And he would just keep doing that week, day after day, and it just kept getting his relationships to grow because if we're not growing, that we're born to grow. And just like you said about mindset and growing and reading and putting, affirmation goals, pictures, that's all part of that growth. So it was kind of neat for him to say how he does it, because a lot of times you get the call from the person and they're fishing, they're fishing for something, and it.
Mhm.
It's like, they just want to get something out and they're calling to get something. And so what Brendan talked about is just shifting that giving heart, that serving heart, to serving your peers and being intentional about it. I tell you, it was just so refreshing to hear somebody have an actual strategy when it came to building relationships, because the relationships are, like you said, are the key. I mean,
Yep.
and I don't know who said it. Oh, I think it was Tony Robbins. He said, the quality of your life is the quality of your relationships. Something like that, something around that phrase. So, what are you like? What did you not think about when you get in your own business? You're building your business. What surprised you the most when you all of a sudden, I didn't really think that. Was there anything that has come up that you went kind of caught you off guard?
Yeah, a little bit. I'd say the building part of building an agency and bringing agents on board.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't mean this to be negative, but you just see how many people don't really want to succeed at a high level. Like they say they do, and everybody talks a big game, but you listen to what people say, you watch what they do, and if it doesn't line up after time, they're just faking themselves, which is fine. Just don't let them fake you. And
Yeah.
that's why when I bring new agents on board, I tell them, hey, your competition, there's not a lot. Like if you'll show up and you'll have a good attitude and you stay consistent, you will win out and you'll be in the top 5% of whatever industry you choose in within 5 years. I, I would stand by that with every fiber of my being because most people are going to quit. In the life insurance industry that I'm in, most people quit within the first 3 months.
Hmm.
And
Oh, really? Is
huge
that
attrition rate. Yeah, they get started. It doesn't take off as quick as they want. It didn't take off in 3 months for me. That's for sure. I got
yeah?
started in April and I didn't really start hitting my stride till about November.
Wow.
That's when it really started taking off. But I was working every day, April, May, June, whether the results were there or not. You can't let it affect your attitude. And that surprised me a little bit is how many people give up so quickly at the first sign of adversity. And if you'll just break through that, there's life on the other side. And you're going to, one of the coolest things about entrepreneurship to me, Pete, is the person that you get to meet and discover that you didn't know who you were to begin with. Like you're going to bring out a part of yourself that you didn't even know existed. Like my wife said, she's like, one of the things that's so wonderful about you is how resilient you are. And I
Mhm,
didn't realize how resilient I was until I needed to be. I had
mhm.
talked about it for years. I could quote these books behind me and I could tell you how you need to be resilient. But when it comes push to shove and it's now you, that's what motivated me. I'm like, well, I've told people about this positive mental attitude thing for years now. I better walk the walk because now it's real. So I don't know if that
Yeah.
really is it, but
No, that's really good. It reminds me, I have a good friend, and she was on my podcast probably a month after you. This is a long time ago. We did like five or six, and we become good friends. And she's a health and fitness coach. And before that, she had her MBA. She was a speech path. She was in therapy. Had a really comfortable career. I mean, she was doing well, and she left that to go after her dream of really impacting people's lives. And she actually gave me the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. But she said this, she said, she said, have you ever heard of the bamboo story? I go, I don't know. I think so. She goes, she said it takes, don't quote me on the years, but say 5 to 8 years before it breaks ground, and then it'll grow up to 2 feet a day.
hmm,
So you look at that, like you just said, you start in April, you're not producing till November. That bamboo is underneath the surface, but you got to keep at it because when it does pop, it goes up fast.
yeah.
And it was just like the echo effect, or just that whole thing about got to put in the work, and you don't get it right away. It's a
Hmm.
delayed gratification that I
Nobody
think,
wants to hear that.
yeah, that it's like we're too much into instant gratification. I want it
Yeah.
now. I want it yesterday, and it doesn't work that way.
Nope.
So I want to be respectful of your time. So tell our viewers, how could they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So best way, see it on the screen there. My cell phone number, it's 609-217-9606. And then email's a great way too. It's just my full name, Brian Daniel Bass, BASS, at gmail.com. And yeah, I'm passionate about what I do. I
Mhm.
protect families. So if you have a family, if you're married, if you have kids, if you have older parents, there's a million ways you can protect your family, but it's something that is highly neglected. It's a very apathetic industry. Nobody thinks they're going to die. I always start off my appointments and I say, "Hey, Pete, just so we're both clear on this, you know you're going to die at some point, right?" Uh, people,
Yeah,
people
I
don't
know.
realize.
It's crazy why people go like they don't even want to talk about it. Nobody makes it out of this life alive.
Exactly.
It's like, but
Exactly.
they just feel like it's, oh, I don't want to talk about it. What do you mean? Hey,
Yep.
we all got to go someday.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's
And
good.
begrudgingly, I've started posting more stuff on Facebook and Instagram. So feel free to look me up on there.
Okay.
I try and put content out there that'll help people and just help them understand that family is the most important thing. We talked about those relationships. Well, nothing's more important than the relationships under your own home. And if we're not protecting those people because we're not proactive and we're being reactive, I can't tell you how many times on a weekly basis, Pete, that people call me up and they say, "Hey, I had a stroke, I had a heart attack, I had this, now I have cancer. Can you help me?" And at that point, that's kind of like getting into the car accident and then wanting car insurance.
Yeah.
It's better to be proactive for our families. And I love having these conversations with people.
Well, awesome. Well, Brian, thank you so much. And I want to encourage our viewers, like, if you know somebody that you could share this with that need the help. I mean, one, he's going to show up with the right mindset. So you want a person that believes in just keeping, growing and reading and doing all the things. So share this with them if you know of somebody that can that can Brian can help and support. And we appreciate you being on. So before we leave, tell our viewers the one thing you would want them to take home from our podcast today.
Improve yourself. You don't control the external circumstances all the time, even how much money you're making, the results that you get. But Jim Rohn taught me years ago, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. And
Yeah,
if you'll make that choice, like you talked about delayed gratification, Pete, I made that decision when I was 21 years old. Somebody gave me a book and I fell in love, like Ed Milet says it best. I became addicted to the expansion of my being. And now when I'm 38 versus 37, I'm like, I'll be damned if I'm not better at 38 than I was at 37. It's like a competition against my former self. So I would say just become a better version of yourself and you'll see that you'll start improving in every area of your life. It's that simple.
that is so good. Well, Brian, thank you so much.